When Manhattan heir Graham defies his powerful Southern family to stand by Danica, the woman he loves, he risks fortune, legacy, and reputation. But will love be strong enough to survive Charleston's old money prejudices? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Graham Whitmore's Manhattan apartment. At 30 years old, he had everything most men would dream of: good looks, family, money, and the right connections. His blonde hair was perfectly cut, his blue eyes carried the confidence of old money, and his smile had graced the society pages more times than he could count. Graham checked his watch, an heirloom passed down from his grandfather, and straightened his tie. Today was important. Today he would finally tell his parents about Danica. His phone rang. It was his mother. "Graham, darling," Elizabeth Whitmore's voice was sweet as honey but firm as steel. "Don't forget your grandmother's birthday gala is next month. The invitations have gone out, and everyone who matters in Charleston will be there." "I haven't forgotten, Mother," Graham said, looking at the framed photo on his desk. It showed him and Danica at the beach last summer, her smile lighting up the entire picture. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. I'm bringing someone." There was a pause on the line. "Oh? And who might that be? Not that Yale professor's daughter I introduced you to at Christmas?" "No, Mother. Her name is Danica Price. We've been seeing each other for almost a year now." "Price? I don't believe I know the family. Are they from Virginia? Old Charleston money?" Graham took a deep breath. "She's from Philadelphia originally. She's a textile designer and art teacher. And Mother, she's black." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for hours. "I see," Elizabeth finally said, her voice suddenly cold. "Well, this is unexpected. Have you really thought this through, Graham? What about Melissa Hampton? Her father just made partner at your father's firm, and she's been asking about you." "I'm not interested in Melissa Hampton, Mother. I love Danica." "Love?" Elizabeth sighed the word like it was a childish notion. "Graham, you have responsibilities. To this family. To our legacy." "I'll see you at Grandmother's birthday," Graham said firmly. "With Danica." He hung up before she could object further. Across town, in a colorful apartment filled with art supplies and fabric swatches, Danica Price was finishing a design for a new textile collection. At 27, she had built a small but growing reputation in New York's art scene. Her designs merged traditional African patterns with modern aesthetics, creating something entirely new. Danica tucked a coil of her natural hair behind her ear as she studied the color palette before her. She never straightened her hair, despite her mother's constant suggestions that it would make her look more professional. She had spent too many years trying to fit into other people's expectations. Her phone buzzed with a text from Graham. "Told my mother about us. It went about as expected. Still love you. Dinner tonight?" Danica sighed. She had been dreading this moment. Meeting Graham at that art gallery opening a year ago had felt like fate. He was unlike any man she'd ever dated, thoughtful, genuine, and completely devoted to her. But she wasn't naive. She knew what it meant to be a black woman dating the heir to one of the South's oldest fortunes. "How bad was it?" she texted back. "Nothing I can't handle. Pick you up at 7. Danica smiled, despite her worries. That was Graham, always believing the best could happen, always thinking love would be enough. That evening, as they sat in a small Italian restaurant, Graham reached across the table and took Danica's hand. "I want you to come to Charleston with me," he said, "for my grandmother's 80th birthday gala." Danica felt her stomach tighten. "Graham, are you sure that's a good idea? From what you've told me about your family, I'm not hiding you anymore," Graham said firmly. "I'm tired of living two separate lives, the good son in Charleston and my real life with you in New York. They need to meet you to see how amazing you are." "And if they don't see that?" Danica asked quietly. "Then that's their loss," Graham said with more confidence than he felt. "It'll be fine. My father might be difficult at first, but he'll come around, and my sister Emily will love you." Danica wasn't convinced, but the hope in Graham's eyes was hard to resist. "Okay," she agreed finally. "But promise me something. Anything. Promise that no matter what happens, we face it together. No running, no hiding, no pretending." Graham squeezed her hand. "I promise we're a team." The weeks passed quickly, and soon they were on a plane to Charleston. Danica had never been more nervous in her life. She had packed and repacked her suitcase a dozen times, unsure what to wear to impress a family that probably didn't want to be impressed by her. "Stop worrying," Graham said, as they drove from the airport toward the historic part of town. "You look beautiful." Danica smoothed down her yellow sundress, a design she had created herself. I just want them to see me, Graham. The real me. Not whatever they're expecting. They will, he assured her. But as they pulled up to the Whitmore family estate, a sprawling antebellum mansion with white columns and manicured gardens, Danica felt her confidence falter. This wasn't just a house. It was a monument to old money, old traditions and old prejudices. Graham's sister Emily met them at the door. She was a younger female version of Graham. Same blonde hair, same blue eyes, same easy smile. "You must be Danica," Emily said, giving her an unexpected hug. "I've heard so much about you. Finally, someone interesting in this family." Danica relaxed a little. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. Then Elizabeth Whitmore appeared in the foyer. She was elegantly dressed in a pale blue suit that probably cost more than Danica's rent. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "So this is the girl you've been hiding away in New York," Elizabeth said, looking Danica up and down. "Oh, you're taller than I imagined." "Mother," Graham warned. "What? It's a compliment," Elizabeth said. "Come in, both of you. Your father is in his study, Graham. He wants to speak with you." "Alone?" Graham hesitated, looking at Danica. "Go," Danica said quietly. "I'll be fine." As Graham reluctantly followed his mother, Emily linked her arm through Danica's. "Don't mind, Mother," she whispered. "She treats everyone like this at first. Let me show you to your room." But as they walked through the house, Danica couldn't help noticing the stares from the staff, the whispers behind hands, the way conversation stopped when she entered a room. She held her head high, reminding herself that she belonged here, if not in this house, then certainly at Graham's side. In his father's study, Graham faced William Whitmore across a massive mahogany desk. William was a taller, sterner version of his son, with grey at his temples and a perpetual frown. "What exactly are you trying to prove, son?" William asked without preamble. "I'm not trying to prove anything, Father. I love her." William laughed without humor. "Love? Is that what this is about? Graham, you're 30 years old. It's time to think about your future, about the family name." "That's exactly what I'm doing," Graham insisted. "Danica is who I want to build a future with. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? The connections, the opportunities. Think about your position in this community." "I have thought about it," Graham said, "and I've decided some things matter more." William stood up, his face flushed with anger. "This isn't just about you. Your grandmother's birthday gala has the governor coming, 2 senators, every important family in Charleston. What do you think they'll say when you show up with her?" "Her name is Danica," Graham said coldly, "and I don't care what they say." "Well, you should," William snapped, "because actions have consequences. If you insist on this rebellion, don't expect the same inheritance your brother received. Don't expect to keep your position at the firm." Graham felt a chill run down his spine. His father wasn't bluffing. The Whitmore family didn't make idle threats. "Are you saying you'd cut me off? Your own son?" "I'm saying choices have consequences," William repeated. "Now she can stay for the weekend. We're not barbarians. But I expect this phase to end soon, very soon." That evening, Danica sat alone in the guest bedroom, trying to calm her nerves before dinner. The room was beautiful with antique furniture and fresh flowers, but it felt cold somehow, unwelcoming. There was a knock at the door. It was an older woman in a uniform, one of the house staff. "Miss Price, Mrs. Whitmore asked me to bring you these," the woman said, holding out a garment bag. "For tonight's dinner." Danica unzipped the bag to find a conservative black dress, at least 2 sizes too large. The message couldn't have been clearer. Her own clothes weren't appropriate. "Please thank Mrs. Whitmore," Danica said, keeping her voice steady. "But I brought my own dress for tonight." The woman looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Whitmore was quite insistent." "I'm sure she was," Danica said with a smile. "But so am I." After the woman left, Danica pulled out the dress she had designed especially for this weekend. A deep green silk that complemented her skin tone perfectly, fitted but not tight, elegant but distinctly her own style. She wouldn't hide who she was, not even for one night. When Graham came to escort her to dinner, his eyes lit up. "You look amazing." "Your mother sent up a different dress," Danica said. Graham's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, she shouldn't have done that." "It's okay," Danica assured him. "It's not the first time someone's tried to change me. It won't be the last." Graham took her hands. "Are you sure you're up for this? We could skip dinner, go into town, and hide." "No way," Danica said firmly. "I didn't come all this way to eat alone in a restaurant. I came to meet your family, all of them." Graham kissed her softly. "Have I told you today how much I love you?" "Yes," she smiled. "But you can tell me again." Dinner was set in the formal dining room, with crystal chandeliers and silver place settings that had probably been in the family for generations. A dozen relatives had gathered for the pre-gala family dinner, all dressed in their southern best. Danica felt the weight of their stares as Graham led her to their seats. His Aunt Margaret leaned over to her husband and whispered loudly enough to be heard, "Is she the help? Why is she sitting at the table?" Graham's cousin Charlotte laughed from across the room. "Oh, Aunt Margaret, don't you know? Graham's trying something new these days." Graham's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, just held Danica's chair as she sat down. "Ignore them," he whispered. But as the evening progressed, it became harder to ignore. The conversation flowed around Danica as if she weren't there. When she did speak about her work, her art students, she was met with polite smiles that didn't reach anyone's eyes. Only Emily engaged with her genuinely, asking questions about her designs, her teaching. By the time dessert was served, Danica felt exhausted from the effort of maintaining her dignity in a room full of people who clearly wished she would disappear. Then, William Whitmore stood up, glass in hand, for a toast. "Family," he began, looking around the table. "That's what we're celebrating this weekend. Not just my mother's 80 years, but what she represents, the continuation of a legacy. The Whitmore name means something in this town, in this state." He paused, his eyes landing directly on Danica. "Family isn't just blood," he continued, his smile not reaching his eyes. "It's legacy. It's protecting what our ancestors built, and it's knowing when someone doesn't belong at the table." Laughter rippled around the room. Glasses clinked. Danica felt her heart crack. She looked at Graham, waiting for him to say something, to defend her, to defend them. But Graham sat frozen, his face pale, his eyes downcast. In that moment, Danica knew. Love wasn't enough. It never had been. She placed her napkin on the table and stood up quietly. No scene, no tears, just dignity. "Excuse me," she said to no one in particular, and walked out of the dining room, her head held high despite the weight crushing her chest. No one stopped her, not even Graham. In the guest room, Danica packed quickly, called a taxi, and left a simple note on the bed. "Love should never ask me to shrink." By the time Graham finally came looking for her hours later, she was gone, back to the hotel in downtown Charleston, her number blocked on his phone, her heart shattered, but her spirit intact. She had loved him completely, but she loved herself more. Graham Whitmore stood in the empty guest room, Danica's note clutched in his trembling hand. "Love should never ask me to shrink." 7 words that cut deeper than any knife. "She's gone?" Emily appeared in the doorway, her face full of concern. "Yes," Graham's voice was hollow, "and I let it happen." Emily stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Graham sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "I froze, Emily. Father said those terrible things, and I just sat there. What kind of man does that make me?" "A Whitmore," Emily said bitterly. "We're trained from birth to never make a scene, aren't we? No matter the cost." Graham looked up at his sister, really seeing her for the first time. "Is that why David left you last year? Because we made him feel like he didn't belong?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "David wasn't from the right family, didn't go to the right schools. Father made sure he knew it, and she wiped her eyes. "I did exactly what you did tonight." "Nothing." Graham crumpled the note in his fist. "I have to find her. It's midnight, Graham. Let her have tonight at least. You owe her that much." Graham nodded slowly. "But tomorrow I'm going to fix this. Somehow." The next morning, Graham found his parents having breakfast on the terrace as if nothing had happened. His mother was discussing flower arrangements for the gala, while his father read the financial section of the newspaper. "Where's Danica?" Elizabeth asked, not looking up from her list. "Gone," Graham said coldly. "She left last night, after Father made it clear she wasn't welcome here." William lowered his newspaper. "Don't be dramatic, son. I simply stated the truth. This family has standards to maintain." "Standards?" Graham's voice rose. "You humiliated the woman I love in front of our entire family." "Lower your voice," Elizabeth hissed. "The staff will hear." "I don't care who hears," Graham shouted. "For once in my life, I'm going to say what I think. What you did last night was cruel and inexcusable." William stood up, his face flushed with anger. "What I did was protect this family from your poor judgment. Did you really think you could bring her here, to your grandmother's birthday, and we would all just accept it? That our friends, our colleagues would accept it?" "Yes." Graham slammed his hand on the table, rattling the china. "Because she is brilliant and kind and worth 10 of any of those so-called friends you're so worried about." "Enough," William roared. I've indulged this rebellion of yours for too long. It ends now, Graham. You are a Whitmore, start acting like one. Or what? Graham challenged. You'll cut me off, take away my trust fund, my position at the firm? Go ahead. A tense silence fell over the terrace. You don't mean that, Elizabeth said finally, her voice shaking. Graham, darling, you're upset, we understand, but this girl has clearly clouded your judgment. Her name is Danica, Graham said through clenched teeth, and she didn't cloud my judgment, she cleared it. For the first time in my life, I can see exactly who you are, who I've been. Think very carefully about your next words, William warned. There are consequences to defying this family. Graham laughed bitterly. That's all you care about, isn't it? The family name, the family money, the family legacy. Well, I don't want any part of it, not if this is what it means. Graham, Elizabeth gasped. You can't mean that. Where would you go? What would you do? I don't know, Graham admitted. But I know I can't stay here pretending to be someone I'm not. William's face hardened. If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back. Not to this house, not to the firm, not to your trust fund. You'll have nothing. Graham looked around at the grand terrace, the manicured gardens beyond, the wealth and privilege that had surrounded him all his life. Then he thought of Danica's face as she walked out of the dining room, head high despite his betrayal. No, father, he said quietly. If I stay, I'll have nothing that matters. He turned and walked away, ignoring his mother's tearful pleas and his father's angry threats. In his room, he packed a single suitcase, taking only what he had bought with his own money, not much for a man who had relied on family wealth his entire life. Emily met him at the front door. You're really doing this? She asked, her eyes wide. I have to, Graham said. I can't be the man she deserves if I stay here playing by their rules. Emily hugged him tightly. Then go be that man, and maybe someday... She glanced back toward the house. Maybe someday I'll find the courage to follow your example. Graham checked into a hotel in downtown Charleston and tried calling Danica. Her number was still blocked. He went to her hotel, but she had already checked out, catching an early flight back to New York. That afternoon, he sat in a coffee shop, staring at his phone. He had dozens of missed calls from his mother, several angry texts from his father, and messages from relatives demanding to know what was going on. He ignored them all and called his assistant in New York instead. Mark, I need you to clear my schedule for the next month, he said, and I'm going to need to sell my condo. Sir? Are you sure? Mark sounded shocked. The penthouse on Park Avenue. But you love that place. I loved what it represented, Graham corrected. Status, prestige, things that don't matter anymore. After hanging up, Graham called his private banker and asked about his personal accounts. Not the trust fund, not the family investments, just the money he had earned himself. It was a fraction of what he was used to, but it would be enough to start over. That night, as he lay in the hotel bed, he realized he had no idea how to win Danica back, or even if he should try. He had failed her when it mattered most. Perhaps the kindest thing would be to let her go, to spare her any more pain from his family, his world. But then he remembered her smile, her laugh, the way she challenged him to be better, to see the world differently. He remembered the strength she showed walking out of that dining room, with her dignity intact. He wouldn't ask for her forgiveness. Not yet. First, he would earn it. 2 weeks later, Graham stepped off a plane in New York. He had spent those weeks setting up a new life, separate from the Whitmore fortune. He had sold his condo and luxury cars, moved his personal investments away from the family holdings, and resigned from his position at his father's firm. The news had traveled fast in Charleston society. Old friends had stopped calling. Business associates who had once courted his favor now ignored his messages. His mother called daily, alternating between tears and anger. "Oh, you're being punished for one dinner," she cried during their last conversation. "We can fix this, darling, just come home." "I'm not being punished, Mother," Graham had replied calmly. "I'm finally growing up." Now, as his taxi drove through the streets of New York, Graham felt a strange mix of fear and freedom. For the first time in his 30 years, he was truly on his own. His new apartment was in Brooklyn, not far from Danica's neighborhood. It was small, just one bedroom with a view of a brick wall, but it was his, bought with his own money. That evening, as he unpacked his few belongings, there was a knock at the door. It was Mark, his former assistant, carrying a box. "I saved these from your office before they cleared it out," Mark explained, handing over the box. "Thought you might want them." Inside were photos, books, small mementos, including the framed picture of Graham and Danica at the beach. "Thanks," Graham said, his throat tight with emotion. "How bad is it at the firm?" Mark shrugged. Your father's telling everyone you're having a breakdown. Your brother James is taking over your clients. The usual Whitmore damage control. Graham nodded. It was exactly what he'd expected. What about you? Mark asked. What's next? Graham had been asking himself the same question. I don't know yet, but I'm figuring it out. After Mark left, Graham sat alone in his new apartment staring at the photo of Danica. He hadn't tried to contact her since returning to New York. Whatever he did next, it couldn't be about winning her back. It had to be about becoming the man who deserved her in the first place. The next morning, Graham walked through Danica's neighborhood, not looking for her, just trying to understand the world she lived in. It was vibrant, diverse, full of small businesses and community spaces, so different from the sterile luxury he was used to. He passed a community center with a sign in the window, "Art Teachers Needed for After-School Program." Graham remembered how passionately Danica had spoken about her students, mostly kids from low-income neighborhoods who had little access to art education, how her face lit up when she described their creativity, their potential. Before he could talk himself out of it, he went inside and asked about volunteering. The program director, a woman named Lucia with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes, looked skeptical. "What's your experience with teaching? Or with kids, for that matter?" "None," Graham admitted, "but I'm willing to learn." Lucia raised an eyebrow. "And why would a man in an expensive suit want to volunteer in a neighborhood like this?" Graham looked down at his clothes, still the designer labels he was used to, another thing that would have to change. "Someone I care about taught me that there's more to life than what I was raised to value," he said honestly. "I'm trying to understand what that means." Lucia studied him for a long moment. "We need someone to help organize supplies, clean up after classes. Nothing glamorous." "I'll take it," Graham said quickly. "It's volunteer work, no pay." "That's fine. Be here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Don't be late." For the next month, Graham threw himself into his new life. During the day, he networked with contacts outside his father's influence, looking for a position where his business degree might be useful. In the afternoons, he worked at the community center, organizing art supplies, cleaning brushes, and eventually helping the children with their projects. He saw Danica for the first time 3 weeks after starting at the center. She was coming out of a classroom as he was mopping the hallway. They both froze. "Graham!" She looked shocked, her wide eyes taking in his casual clothes, the mop in his hands. "What are you doing here?" "I volunteer here now," he said simply. 3 days a week. "Why?" Her voice was guarded, suspicious. "Because I needed to change," Graham answered, and this seemed like a good place to start. Danica looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Are you staying at your parents' place when they're in town?" "No." Graham leaned on the mop handle. "I sold my condo. I live in Brooklyn now." "You sold your condo?" Danica couldn't hide her surprise. "What about your job at the firm?" "I resigned. I'm looking for something new." Danica's eyes narrowed. "Is this some kind of game, Graham? Some elaborate way to get me back?" "No," Graham said firmly. "This isn't about getting you back, Danica. This is about becoming the person I should have been all along, the person who would have stood up for you that night." Danica's expression softened slightly. "And your family? What do they think about all this?" "My father has essentially disowned me," Graham said with a small smile. "My mother thinks I'm having a nervous breakdown. My brother is thrilled to have my clients. Only Emily still speaks to me regularly." "I'm sorry," Danica said, and she seemed to mean it. "Don't be. It's the best thing that could have happened to me." Graham straightened up. "I should finish this floor before the next class." Danica nodded and started to walk away, then turned back. "Why didn't you try to contact me after that night?" Graham met her eyes. "Because I didn't deserve to. What I did, or didn't do, at that dinner. I can't ask for your forgiveness until I've earned it." Danica's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "And how will you know when you've earned it?" "I won't," Graham said simply. "That's for you to decide, if you ever do." Danica nodded slowly, then continued down the hall. Graham watched her go, his heart both heavy and lighter than it had been in weeks. He hadn't lost her completely. Not yet. There was still a chance, however small, that he could become the man she deserved. 2 months after leaving Charleston, Graham received a letter from his grandmother. It was brief and to the point. "The gala is in 3 weeks. Your seat at the table remains yours, should you choose to claim it, with or without your young lady. Family is family, after all. Love, grandmother." Graham set the letter aside. He had almost forgotten about the gala, the event that had set all of this in motion. His first instinct was to ignore it, to cut that final tie to his old life. But then he thought about what Danica had said before they went to Charleston. No running, no hiding, no pretending. Perhaps there was one more step in becoming the man he wanted to be. One more test to face. That evening he called his grandmother directly. "I'd like to come to your birthday celebration," he said after they exchanged pleasantries. "But I need to know that Danica will be welcome, truly welcome, if she chooses to come with me." There was a long pause. "Your father won't like it," his grandmother said finally. "I'm not asking about my father, I'm asking about you." Another pause. "I've lived 80 years in this town, Graham. I've seen it change in ways I never thought possible. Perhaps it's time I changed a little too." She cleared her throat. "Bring your young lady. I'll handle your father." After hanging up, Graham sat for a long time, thinking. He hadn't spoken to Danica outside the community center in weeks. She was polite when they crossed paths, but distant. He had no right to ask her to face his family again, to subject herself to their judgment, but he also knew that running away from Charleston, from his family, wasn't the answer, not in the long term. If there was ever to be a future for them, it would have to include both worlds. The question was, would Danica be willing to take that risk again? And more importantly, did he have the courage to stand beside her this time, no matter what? The next day, he waited for her after her class at the community center. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Not here. Maybe coffee." Danica hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but just coffee." At a small cafe around the corner, they sat across from each other awkwardly, like strangers on a first date. "My grandmother's birthday gala is in 3 weeks, Graham said finally. "I'm going." "I see," Danica said carefully. "Good for you. Making peace with your family is important." "I'm not making peace," Graham clarified. "I'm making a stand, and I'd like you to be there with me, if you want to be." Danica stared at him. "Are you serious? After what happened last time?" "This time would be different," Graham promised. "I would be different." "How can you be sure? These are the people who raised you, Graham. Their values shaped you for 30 years. And you changed me in one," Graham said softly. "You showed me what real strength looks like, what integrity looks like." Danica looked away. "Pretty words. But when it mattered, you were silent." "Yes," Graham admitted. "I was. And I will regret that for the rest of my life. But I'm asking for a chance to show you who I am now." "And who is that exactly?" Graham thought for a moment. "Someone who knows what matters. Someone who won't be silent again." Danica stirred her coffee, not meeting his eyes. "I don't know, Graham. Going back there, facing those people again." "I understand," Graham said quietly. "It's too much to ask." "I didn't say no." Danica looked up at him. "I said, I don't know. I need to think about it." Graham nodded. "Take all the time you need. The invitation stands, whatever you decide." As they left the cafe, Danica turned to him. "Why is this so important to you? Why go back at all?" "Because running away solved nothing," Graham said. "Because my family needs to see that I've changed, that you changed me for the better. And because," he took a deep breath, "because I still love you, Danica. I never stopped. And if there's any chance for us, we have to face this together." Danica's eyes softened. "I'll think about it," she repeated, and walked away. Graham watched her go, hope and fear battling in his heart. He had done everything he could to become a better man. Now all he could do was wait, and hope it was enough. A week passed with no word from Danica. Graham tried to focus on his work at the community center and his job search, but his mind kept drifting to her. Had he asked too much? Was it selfish to want her to face his family again after what happened? He was cleaning brushes after an art class when Lucia, the program director, approached him. "You've been good for this place," she said, watching him work. "The kids like you." Graham smiled. "I like them too. They're honest in a way adults rarely are." "Danica told me what happened with your family," Lucia said, getting straight to the point. "Why you started volunteering here." Graham's hands stilled. "Did she?" "She said you're going back to face them, and you asked her to go with you." "I did," Graham admitted. "Probably a mistake." Lucia leaned against the sink. "When I was 20, I fell in love with a man my parents disapproved of. They gave me an ultimatum, him or them. I chose him." "What happened?" "We were happy for 15 years, had 2 beautiful children. Then he died suddenly. Heart attack." Lucia's eyes grew distant. "At the funeral, my parents showed up. 15 years of silence, and they just appeared like no time had passed." "Were you able to forgive them?" Graham asked. "Eventually, but I always wished they'd had the chance to know my husband, to see the life we built together." She fixed Graham with a stern look. The problem with running away is that nothing gets resolved. The same walls stay up. Nothing changes. Graham nodded slowly. That's why I need to go back. Not to make peace with their prejudice, but to show them who I really am now, who I choose to be. Exactly. Lucia patted his shoulder. And for what it's worth, I think Danica knows that too. That evening, Graham's phone rang. It was Danica. I'll go with you, she said without preamble. To Charleston, to the gala. Graham's heart leapt. Are you sure? No, Danica admitted with a small laugh. But Lucia said something today that made sense. She said sometimes you have to face the past to create a future. She's a wise woman, Graham said. There's one condition, Danica added, her voice turning serious. We go as friends, Graham. Nothing more. I'm not ready to jump back into a relationship. I need to see who you really are now, not just at the community center, but with your family in your world. I understand, Graham said, though his heart sank a little. Friends it is. Book the tickets, Danica said. And Graham, this time don't let me down. The weeks leading up to the gala passed quickly. Graham found a job with a small investment firm that focused on ethical businesses, accepting a salary far below what he was used to, but finding the work more meaningful. He and Danica saw each other regularly at the community center, rebuilding a cautious friendship. Emily called from Charleston with updates. Their father was furious about Graham's invitation to the gala, especially when he learned Danica might attend. Their mother was caught in the middle, torn between her husband's anger and her desire to have her son home. The extended family was buzzing with gossip. Grandmother is standing firm, though, Emily reported. She says it's her birthday, and she'll have whoever she wants at her table. How is she handling father? Graham asked. Like she always has. She reminded him who owns the house, the company stock, and most of the family fortune. Emily chuckled. He backed down pretty quickly after that. The night before they were set to leave for Charleston, Graham met Danica for dinner. She seemed nervous, playing with her food more than eating it. We don't have to do this, Graham said gently. We can call it off, stay in New York. Danica shook her head. No, I need to do this. For myself as much as for us. Whatever us turns out to be. What are you most afraid of? Graham asked. Danica thought for a moment. That I'll walk into that room full of wealthy, powerful people who think I don't belong there, and I'll start to believe them, that I'll shrink myself again to fit into their world. You won't, Graham said confidently. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen your strength, your dignity. You're the strongest person I know, Danica. You walked out of that dining room alone with your head held high. That took more courage than I've shown in my entire life. Danica reached across the table and took his hand, the first time she had voluntarily touched him since Charleston. This time, I won't be alone. Will I? Graham squeezed her hand. Not for a second. The flight to Charleston was tense. Danica was quiet, staring out the window as the southern landscape came into view. Graham respected her silence, giving her space to prepare herself. Emily met them at the airport, greeting Danica with a warm hug. I'm so glad you came, she said sincerely, and I'm so sorry about last time. Thank you, Danica said, relaxing a little at Emily's genuine welcome. I've booked you separate rooms at the hotel downtown, Emily told them as they drove from the airport. I figured you wouldn't want to stay at the house. Good call, Graham agreed. How bad is it at home? Emily grimaced. Father is barely speaking to anyone. Mother is drinking more than usual. The staff are walking on eggshells, so normal Whitmore drama. And grandmother, cool as ever. She's actually excited to meet Danica properly. Emily glanced in the rearview mirror at Danica. She says any woman who can make a Whitmore man change his ways is worth knowing. At the hotel, Graham walked Danica to her room. The gala isn't until tomorrow night. What would you like to do today? I could show you around Charleston, the parts tourists don't usually see. Danica hesitated. Actually, I'd like to rest. Process. Prepare myself for tomorrow. Of course, Graham said, hiding his disappointment. Whatever you need. Graham, Danica called as he turned to leave. Thank you for respecting my boundaries, for not pushing. He smiled. That's what friends do, right? The morning of the gala, Graham met with his grandmother at her request. The old woman received him in her private sitting room, elegant as always in a pale blue dress, her white hair perfectly styled. You look well, she said, studying him carefully. Different. I am different, Graham said, kissing her cheek. Sit. Tell me about this young woman who's turned our world upside down. Graham smiled. Danica is extraordinary, talented, kind, strong. She teaches art to children who have nothing, and she makes them believe they can be anything. She designs textiles that tell stories through color and pattern. She never pretends to be something she's not. Unlike most of the people who will be at my party tonight, his grandmother said dryly. Exactly. She reached for his hand, her skin paper-thin, but her grip still strong. Your father is a product of his generation, Graham, and his father before him. They were raised to believe that the Whitmore name was everything, that preserving it meant preserving certain traditions. Traditions like racism? Graham asked bluntly. His grandmother didn't flinch. Yes, among other things, it was wrong then, and it's wrong now. I was too much a coward to fight it in my time. Perhaps you're braver than I was. Graham was stunned. In all his 30 years, he had never heard his grandmother speak this way. Tonight won't be easy, she continued. There will be people at that gala who share your father's views. Old money, old prejudices. Are you prepared for that? I am, Graham said firmly. The question is, are you prepared to stand with us? His grandmother smiled, a hint of her former steel showing through. I'm 80 years old, Graham. I've lived long enough to see that the world doesn't end when things change. It just becomes a different world. She patted his hand. Bring your Danica to see me before the gala. I want to meet her properly without all the drama. That afternoon, Graham and Danica visited his grandmother. Danica was nervous, but she had dressed carefully in a simple blue dress that complemented her dark skin beautifully. Eleanor Whitmore greeted them in her sitting room, her sharp eyes taking in Danica's natural hair, her graceful posture, the subtle confidence in her smile. So, you're the young woman who's taught my grandson to think for himself, Eleanor said, gesturing for them to sit. It's about time someone did. Danica relaxed slightly. I'm not sure I can take credit for that, Mrs. Whitmore. Eleanor, please, and of course you can. I've known Graham his entire life. He's always been a good boy, eager to please, desperate for approval. She looked at her grandson fondly, but never brave enough to defy the family. Until you. It wasn't about defiance, Danica said. It was about being true to himself. Eleanor nodded. Exactly. Something the Whitmores have never been particularly good at. She turned to Graham. Your father and mother will be at the gala tonight. They've agreed to be civil, but I make no guarantees beyond that. The same goes for the rest of the family, and the various society vultures who will be circling. We're prepared, Graham assured her. Eleanor looked at Danica. Are you, my dear? Charleston society can be vicious, especially to those they see as outsiders. Danica met the older woman's gaze steadily. With all due respect, Mrs. Whitmore, Eleanor, I've faced prejudice my entire life. I grew up in a world where people like me are often made to feel we don't belong. I'm used to the stares, the whispers, the subtle and not so subtle hostility. What hurt me last time wasn't your family's reaction. It was Graham's silence. Graham winced but didn't interrupt. And that won't happen again? Eleanor asked, looking at her grandson. No, Graham said firmly. Never again. Eleanor studied them both, then nodded, satisfied. Good, then let them stare all they want. We Whitmores have always enjoyed making a scene when it's on our terms. The Whitmore mansion was transformed for the gala. The gardens sparkled with thousands of tiny lights, elegant tables dotted the lawn, and a small orchestra played on a raised platform. Charleston's elite mingled in formal attire, diamonds glittering in the soft evening light. Graham and Danica arrived fashionably late. She wore a stunning gold silk dress that clung to every curve, her natural hair styled in a high bun, her chin held high. Graham, in a classic tuxedo, couldn't take his eyes off her. Ready? He asked as their car approached the mansion. Danica took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. The moment they entered the garden, conversation faltered. Heads turned. Whispers began. Graham felt Danica tense beside him, but she kept walking, her posture perfect, her expression serene. Emily rushed over to greet them, elegant in a green gown. You look amazing, she told Danica, hugging her warmly. Both of you. William and Elizabeth Whitmore stood near the champagne fountain, surrounded by friends. When they spotted Graham and Danica, Elizabeth's smile froze. William's face darkened. We should say hello to my parents, Graham said quietly. Lead the way, Danica replied, squeezing his hand. As they approached, the circle around William and Elizabeth parted, creating an uncomfortable silence. Mother, father, Graham said formally. Good evening. Graham, Elizabeth managed, her voice strained. How nice of you to come. William said nothing, just stared coldly at their joined hands. You remember Danica? Graham continued, refusing to be intimidated. Of course, Elizabeth said with a tight smile. Lovely to see you again. Danica nodded politely. Thank you for having me in your home, Mrs. Whitmore. William finally spoke, his voice low and controlled. This is a private family event, Graham. I thought I made myself clear about our expectations. You did, Graham acknowledged, but Grandmother made it equally clear that we were both welcome. Mother is getting sentimental in her old age, William said dismissively. She doesn't understand how these things work anymore. Or perhaps she understands better than any of us, Graham suggested. William's jaw tightened. We agreed to be civil for tonight. Don't push it. Civil isn't enough, Graham said quietly. Danica deserves respect. From all of us. Before William could respond, Eleanor Whitmore appeared, regal in silver and diamonds. There you are, she said, taking Danica's arm. I've been waiting to introduce you to some friends who are actually worth knowing. Come, both of you. As Eleanor led them away, Graham caught his father's furious expression and his mother's look of confusion. But for the first time in his life, their disapproval didn't affect him. Eleanor introduced them to a select group of her friends, older, established members of Charleston society who were more open-minded than most. They asked Danica about her work, her background, treating her with genuine interest rather than condescension. Throughout the evening, Graham remained at Danica's side, hyper-aware of the stares, the whispers, the raised eyebrows. But Danica handled it all with grace, engaging in conversation, smiling genuinely, refusing to be made uncomfortable. You're amazing, he whispered as they paused by the garden fountain. Everyone is watching you, and you're completely unaffected. Oh, I'm affected, Danica admitted, but I decided something today. I'm not here for them. I'm here for me, for us, to see if there could be an us again. Graham's heart leapt. And what do you think? Danica smiled. I think you've changed, really changed. Not just your address or your job, but something deeper. You changed me, Graham said simply. You showed me a different way to live, a better way. Before Danica could respond, the orchestra began playing a waltz, and Eleanor took the center of the dance floor with her oldest friend, a retired judge. Other couples joined them. Would you dance with me? Graham asked, offering his hand. Danica hesitated. Everyone will stare. Let them, Graham said, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm proud to be seen with you. I want everyone here to know that. Slowly, Danica took his hand and allowed him to lead her onto the dance floor. The crowd parted. Conversations stopped. All eyes turned to them. Graham placed his hand on her waist, took her other hand in his, and began to lead her in the waltz. At first they danced alone, a solitary pair surrounded by staring onlookers. Then Eleanor and her partner moved closer, smiling encouragingly. Emily joined the dance floor with her cousin. Gradually, others followed, but not everyone. William Whitmore stood at the edge of the crowd, his face rigid with anger. Several of his closest friends and business associates followed his lead, turning their backs on the dance floor in silent protest. Your father looks like he might explode, Danica murmured as Graham twirled her gracefully. Let him, Graham said. This isn't about him anymore. It's about us. As the music swelled, Graham pulled Danica closer. I love you, he said softly. I never stopped. And if you'll give me another chance, I swear I'll never let you down again. Danica's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I love you too. I tried to stop, but I couldn't. The music ended, and the dancers applauded the orchestra. But as Graham and Danica turned to leave the floor, they found William Whitmore blocking their path, his face flushed with barely controlled rage. Enough of this spectacle, he said in a low, dangerous voice. You've made your point, Graham. Now it's time for your friend to leave. A hush fell over the nearby guests. Eleanor moved toward them, but Graham held up a hand, stopping her. This was his moment to stand up, to be the man Danica deserved. Danica isn't going anywhere, he said clearly, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. She is my guest. More than that, she is the woman I love. And if anyone here has a problem with that... He looked around at the watching crowd, at the familiar faces of Charleston society. I suggest you say it now. William stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You're making a fool of yourself, and of this family. Is that what you want? To destroy generations of respect, of tradition? If those traditions include judging people by the color of their skin, rather than the content of their character, then yes, Graham said firmly. It's time for new traditions, better ones. This is my house, William hissed. Actually, it's mine, Eleanor interrupted, moving to stand beside Graham and Danica. And in my house, all of my guests are welcome, especially those who make my grandson happy. William stared at his mother in shock. You can't possibly approve of this relationship. What I approve of, Eleanor said clearly, is courage. Something Graham has finally found, it seems. She turned to the watching crowd. Now, I believe the orchestra is about to play another waltz. Shall we continue celebrating? William stood frozen for a moment longer, then turned on his heel and strode away. Elizabeth hesitated, looking torn, then hurried after her husband. Several of their closest friends followed, murmuring among themselves. Graham watched them go, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He turned to Danica. "Are you okay?" She smiled, radiant in the garden lights. Never better. As the orchestra began to play again, more couples returned to the dance floor. Emily approached, grinning widely. "That was magnificent," she said. "I think Father might have had a small stroke." "He'll recover," Graham said dryly. "He always does." "Half the board members from the firm left with him," Emily reported. "The other half are looking at you with new respect." She nodded toward a group of older men watching Graham thoughtfully. "Times are changing, even in Charleston." "Not fast enough," Danica said. "No," Emily agreed. "But moments like this help push things forward. You two certainly gave them something to talk about." As the evening continued, some guests made excuses and left early. Others, surprisingly, made a point of introducing themselves to Danica, asking about her work, her background. Not all were genuine, but some were. Curious, respectful, even admiring. Eleanor found them as the gala was winding down. "Well," she said with satisfaction, "that was the most interesting birthday party I've had in decades." "I'm sorry if we ruined it," Graham said. "Ruined it? My dear boy. You made it memorable." She patted Danica's hand. "And you, my dear, have more poise than most of the women who've been attending these events their entire lives. I hope we'll see more of you in Charleston." "Thank you," Danica said sincerely. "That means a lot." As they prepared to leave, Graham spotted his mother standing alone by the garden entrance. Elizabeth Whitmore looked lost, uncertain, nothing like the confident socialite she usually presented to the world. "Wait here," Graham told Danica, and walked over to his mother. "Where's Father?" he asked. "He went to the club," Elizabeth said, her voice strained. "He didn't want to stay after what happened." Graham nodded. He hadn't expected anything else. "Are you really in love with her?" Elizabeth asked suddenly. "Yes," Graham said without hesitation. "More than I ever thought possible." Elizabeth looked past him to where Danica stood with Eleanor, their heads bent in conversation. "She seems nice." It wasn't much, but from his mother, it was something. A tiny crack in the wall. "She is nice," Graham agreed. "She's also brilliant, talented, and stronger than anyone I know." Elizabeth bit her lip. "Your father may never accept this, Graham. You know how he is." "I know, and I've made my peace with that." "And me?" Elizabeth asked, her voice small. "Where do I fit in your new life?" Graham softened. "That's up to you, Mother. The door is open if you want to walk through it, but you'll have to accept Danica as part of my life. My whole life, not just some secret you can hide away." Elizabeth nodded slowly. "I don't know if I can, but I don't want to lose you." "Then try," Graham said simply. "That's all I'm asking. Just try." As Graham returned to Danica, he felt lighter than he had in months. The evening hadn't been perfect. There had been stares, whispers, even outright hostility, but he had faced it all with Danica beside him, both of them standing tall. And for the first time, he believed they could build a future together, not despite their differences, but embracing them. A new kind of family, built on love rather than legacy. "Ready to go?" he asked, taking her hand. Danica smiled up at him, her eyes full of love and promise. "Yes, let's go home." Graham and Danica returned to New York the day after the gala, both quiet on the flight, processing everything that had happened. The confrontation with his father, the unexpected support from his grandmother, the mixed reactions from Charleston society. It had been an emotional whirlwind. "No regrets?" Graham asked, as their taxi pulled up to Danica's apartment building. "None," she said, squeezing his hand. "But I need some time, Graham, to think." "To be sure." Graham nodded, though his heart sank a little. "I understand. Take all the time you need." "Thank you for standing up for me," Danica said softly. "For us." It meant everything. She kissed him lightly on the cheek and disappeared into her building, leaving Graham with hope but also uncertainty. The ball was in her court now. A week passed with no word from Danica. Graham threw himself into his work at the investment firm and the community center, trying not to check his phone every 5 minutes. Emily called from Charleston with updates. "Father is still furious," she reported. "He's telling everyone you're going through a phase. Mother cries a lot, but Grandmother is defending you to anyone who'll listen." "And you?" Graham asked. "How are you holding up?" There was a pause. "Actually, I broke up with Richard." "Your boyfriend? The banker Father approved of?" Why? Because I realized something watching you and Danica. I realized I've been living my life to please everyone but myself. Richard was father's choice, not mine. He's boring and conventional and safe. Emily's voice grew stronger. I don't want safe anymore. I want real. Graham smiled. I'm proud of you, Em. Yeah, well, father's now convinced you've corrupted me too, but I've never felt better. After hanging up, Graham sat at his desk, staring at a photo of Danica. He missed her terribly, but he had promised to give her space. The last thing he wanted was to pressure her. Then his phone buzzed with a text from her. Community Center. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. I have something to show you. Graham's heart raced. What did she want to show him? Was it good news or bad? He barely slept that night, his mind cycling through possibilities. The next day, Graham arrived at the community center promptly at 5. Lucia met him at the door with a knowing smile. She's in the main art room, Lucia said. The kids have been working on something special. Graham walked down the familiar hallway, his palms sweating, his heart pounding. When he reached the art room, he found Danica surrounded by a dozen children aged 8 to 12, all beaming with excitement. Graham, the children called when they saw him. They had grown fond of him over the past months. What's all this? Graham asked, looking around at the tables covered with art supplies. Danica stepped forward, looking nervous but determined. The kids and I have been working on a project. We want to show you. She nodded to a girl named Maya, who proudly held up a large canvas. It was a collage of drawings, photos, and fabric swatches, all arranged to tell a story. Graham recognized images of himself cleaning brushes, helping children with their art, laughing with Lucia. There were photos of Danica teaching, of the two of them together at the center, and in the middle, painted in bright colors, were the words, "Love should never ask us to shrink." The kids wanted to show you how much you mean to this place, Danica explained. How much you've changed since you started volunteering here. And how much we want you to stay, added Maya. Graham felt a lump in his throat. This is amazing. Thank you all. The children beamed, then, at a signal from Lucia, filed out of the room, leaving Graham and Danica alone. There's more, Danica said quietly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. I've been thinking a lot about us, about what happened in Charleston, about who you were and who you are now. Graham held his breath as she opened the box. Inside was a simple ring, not a diamond, but a band of gold with a pattern etched into it that he recognized as one of Danica's textile designs. The kids helped me make it, she said. We used the gold jewelry-making class I teach on Thursdays. Danica, Graham whispered, hardly daring to hope. I love you, Graham Whitmore, Danica said, her eyes shining. The man you've become, the man you're still becoming. And if you still want me— Yes, Graham interrupted, pulling her into his arms. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He kissed her deeply, his heart so full it might burst. When they finally pulled apart, Danica was laughing through tears. I didn't actually ask you anything yet, she pointed out. Sorry, Graham grinned. Ask me. Danica took a deep breath. Will you build a life with me? A new kind of family based on who we really are, not who anyone else wants us to be. That's all I want, Graham said simply. You're all I want. She slipped the ring onto his finger, a reversal of tradition that felt perfectly right. Then let's begin. Over the next month, they planned a small wedding ceremony in New York. Nothing fancy, just close friends and a few family members. Graham invited his parents without much hope they would attend. His mother called a week before the wedding. Your father won't be coming, Elizabeth said, her voice strained. He says he can't support this decision. I expected that, Graham said, trying to hide his disappointment. And you, Mother? There was a long pause. I'd like to come, if that's all right with you, and with Danica. Graham nearly dropped the phone in shock. Of course it's all right. But why the change of heart? Your grandmother, Elizabeth admitted. She's been persistent, made me see some things differently. And Emily, too. She talks about you all the time, how happy you are now. Another pause. I want to see that for myself. The wedding was held in a small garden in Brooklyn, with Lucia officiating. Danica wore a simple white dress she had designed herself, incorporating patterns from her African heritage. Graham wore a blue suit, not designer label, but one that fit him perfectly all the same. Eleanor Whitmore attended, elegant as always, accompanied by Emily, who served as Danica's maid of honor. A few of Graham's friends from his new life came, along with Danica's colleagues and students from the community center. And, to Graham's surprise, Elizabeth Whitmore sat in the front row, looking uncomfortable but determined. Your mother came, Danica whispered, as they prepared to walk down the aisle. She's trying, Graham said. That's all we can ask. The ceremony was simple, their vows heartfelt. They promised to face life together, to support each other's dreams, to never ask the other to be less than who they truly were. At the small reception afterward, Elizabeth approached them hesitantly. It was a lovely ceremony, she said, her eyes taking in Danika's radiant face, Graham's obvious happiness. You both look wonderful. Thank you for coming, Mother, Graham said sincerely. It means a lot. Elizabeth nodded, then turned to Danika. I owe you an apology. For the way you were treated in our home, it was inexcusable. Danika's eyes widened in surprise. Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. That means a great deal to me. Elizabeth, please, Graham's mother said, attempting a smile. We're family now, after all. It was a small step, but an important one. As Elizabeth moved away to speak with Eleanor, Danika squeezed Graham's hand. Your mother's trying, she said softly. That's something. More than I expected, Graham admitted. But what about you? Are you okay with this tentative acceptance? Danika thought for a moment. I'm not naive, Graham. One apology doesn't erase everything. But it's a beginning, and beginnings matter. The first year of their marriage brought changes neither could have anticipated. Graham's firm promoted him to head a new division focused on investments in underserved communities. Danika's textile designs caught the attention of a major fashion house, leading to a collaboration that put her work on runways in New York and Paris. They bought a small house in a diverse Brooklyn neighborhood with enough space for Danika's studio and a spare room that in time they hoped would become a nursery. Graham's relationship with his mother continued to improve, with regular phone calls and occasional visits when Elizabeth came to New York. William Whitmore remained estranged from his son, refusing all contact. But Graham had made peace with that loss, focusing instead on the new family he was building with Danika. Emily followed in her brother's footsteps, moving to New York to pursue her own dreams away from the constraints of Charleston society. She became a regular visitor to their home, forming a close bond with Danika. Then, 9 months after their wedding, Danika shared news that changed everything. I'm pregnant, she told Graham one evening as they sat in their small garden. We're going to have a baby. Graham's joy was boundless. He called his mother immediately, and Elizabeth's tearful response surprised them both. A grandchild, she whispered. Oh, Graham, that's wonderful news. Will you tell father? Graham asked, not daring to hope for a reconciliation, but wanting his father to know nonetheless. I will, Elizabeth promised. Whether he'll respond, I can't say, but I'll tell him. Danika's pregnancy was smooth, and their daughter, Zora Eleanor Whitmore, was born on a sunny spring morning. She had Graham's blue eyes, Danika's warm brown skin, and a full head of dark curls that made Graham's mother exclaim with delight when she visited. She's perfect, Elizabeth said, holding her granddaughter for the first time. Absolutely perfect. William Whitmore sent a formal note of congratulations, but declined to visit. Graham was disappointed but not surprised. He focused instead on the joy of fatherhood, of watching Danika become a mother, of building traditions for their new family that honored both their backgrounds. 1 year later, they planned a small celebration for Zora's first birthday. Nothing elaborate, just a gathering in the local park with friends, family, and some of Danika's students from the community center. The day was perfect, sunny but not too hot, with a gentle breeze that ruffled Zora's dark curls as she toddled between guests, charming everyone with her infectious laugh. Eleanor Whitmore had flown in for the occasion, accompanied by Emily. They sat with Danika's parents, who had welcomed Graham into their family with open arms from the beginning. Graham was helping Lucia set up the birthday cake when he glanced toward the park entrance and froze. Elizabeth Whitmore had arrived, expected and welcomed, but behind her, looking uncomfortable and out of place in his expensive suit, stood William Whitmore. Graham's heart pounded. He hadn't seen his father in over 2 years. What was he doing here? What did it mean? Graham? Danika appeared at his side, following his gaze. Is that my father? Graham confirmed, his voice tight. I don't know why he's here. Do you want me to ask him to leave? Danika offered, her protective instincts flaring. Graham thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, this is Zora's day. Let's see what he wants. They watched as Elizabeth led William toward them, her face anxious, his unreadable. When they reached Graham and Danika, an awkward silence fell. Graham, William said finally, his voice formal. Danika, thank you for having this celebration. We didn't invite you, Graham pointed out, unable to keep the edge from his voice. I know, William acknowledged. Your mother thought, she suggested. He paused, clearly struggling. I wanted to meet my granddaughter. Graham looked at his father, really looked at him. William Whitmore seemed older, somehow diminished. The proud, unyielding man who had threatened to cut Graham off from the family now stood before him almost hesitantly, as if unsure of his welcome. That's why you're here, to meet Zora? Graham asked. William nodded stiffly. If you'll permit it. Graham looked at Danica, leaving the decision to her. After all, this was the man who had humiliated her, who had made it clear he thought she didn't belong in his world. Danica studied William for a long moment, then handed Zora to Graham. I'll get her cleaned up first, she said, her voice neutral. She's been playing in the sandbox. She walked away toward the park restrooms, leaving Graham and his parents standing in uncomfortable silence. She hates me, William said flatly. I don't blame her. She doesn't hate you, Graham corrected. She's protecting our daughter. There's a difference. William nodded slowly. I've been thinking a lot about family, about legacy, about the kind of grandfather I want to be. He met Graham's eyes directly. About the kind of father I've been. Graham waited, not making it easier for him. I was wrong, William said finally, the words clearly difficult for him. Not about everything, but about enough, about what matters. It wasn't a full apology, but from William Whitmore it was extraordinary. Graham felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Why now? He asked. Your mother, William admitted. She's been persistent, showed me photos of Zora, made me see what I was missing. He paused. And your grandmother. She reminded me that family is about more than bloodlines and traditions. It's about love. Graham was saved from responding by Danica's return. She carried Zora, now clean and smiling, in her arms. This is your grandfather, she told Zora softly. Your grandpa William. The simple words, the acceptance they implied, brought tears to Elizabeth's eyes. William stood rigidly, clearly unsure how to interact with the small child who shared his blood, but looked so different from what he had expected in a grandchild. Then Zora reached out one chubby hand toward William's face, curious and unafraid, as only children can be. Would you like to hold her? Danica asked William directly. William looked startled, then nodded. Yes, if that's... Yes. Carefully, Danica transferred Zora to William's arms. The old man stood awkwardly for a moment, then relaxed as Zora patted his cheek with a delighted giggle. She has your eyes, William said to Graham, his voice rough with emotion. But her mother's smile. She has both of our strengths, Danica said, and hopefully none of our weaknesses. William looked at her, really looked at her perhaps for the first time. You've built a beautiful family, both of you. I would like to be part of it, if you'll allow it. Danica met his gaze steadily. Not for Graham, not for forgiveness, but for Zora. Because every child deserves to know where they come from, all of where they come from. William nodded, understanding the terms being set. Thank you. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It wasn't forgetting the pain of the past, but it was a beginning, a chance to build something new from the broken pieces of what had come before. Cake time, Emily called from across the park, breaking the moment. As they walked toward the picnic tables where friends and family waited, Graham put his arm around Danica's waist. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Letting him into our lives? Into Zora's life? Danica watched as William carried Zora carefully across the grass, the child's small hand still patting his cheek in fascination. Healing doesn't mean forgetting, she said softly. It just means choosing love anyway. Graham tightened his arm around her. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise, Danica laughed. You just finally started listening. As they joined the others around the birthday cake, Graham looked at the circle of faces. Danica's parents, warm and loving. His grandmother, proud and resilient. His sister, finding her own path. His mother, trying to bridge two worlds. His father, taking his first tentative steps toward change. And at the center, Danica and Zora, the heart of his new life. It wasn't perfect. There would be hard days ahead, old prejudices to overcome, new challenges to face, but they would face them together, standing tall, never shrinking, never hiding who they were. And if people stared, well, let them stare. Love was worth it. Family was worth it. The truth was worth it. Graham caught Danica's eye across the table and smiled. She smiled back, the same radiant smile that had captured his heart at that art gallery years ago. The smile that had changed everything. The smile that had finally taught him how to be brave. Later that evening, as they put Zora to bed in her crib, Danica turned to Graham with a thoughtful expression. Your father surprised me today, she admitted. I never thought he'd take that step. Me neither, Graham agreed. Do you think he's really changed? Danica considered the question. People don't change completely, Graham. Not at his age, with those deeply ingrained beliefs. But they can learn. They can grow. They can make different choices. Like I did? Yes. She touched his face gently. But you were always different. You just needed someone to help you see it. Graham pulled her close. Thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a second chance. Thank you for becoming the man I always knew you could be, Danica whispered against his chest. They stood together in the soft light of their daughter's room, watching her sleep peacefully. Outside, the lights of Brooklyn twinkled against the darkening sky, so different from the grand estate in Charleston, yet so much more truly home. Graham thought about the journey that had brought them here, the pain, the growth, the courage it had taken, the courage it would continue to take every day to live authentically in a world that didn't always make that easy. But looking at Danica, at their daughter, he knew with absolute certainty that it was worth it. That love, real love, the kind that accepted all of who you were, was always worth it. I love you, he said simply. Danica smiled up at him. I love you too, now and always. They closed the nursery door quietly and walked hand in hand toward their future, together. The end.